There's an old saying that familiarity breeds contempt. That is, as we get used to things, we underestimate their potential for danger and overestimate our potential to deal with the danger. Think about the people who live close to the volcano in Hawaii and nearly waited too long to evacuate. Of course, most of us will never have to flee a river of molten rock, but there are plenty of things much closer to home, in fact, in our homes, that we should respect much more than we do. This evening, Lloyd will discuss one of those things, Lloyd Smith and Project 2 and Level 2 of the presentation Mastery Path in an instant. Lloyd Smith.
Those of you who own your own houses or hope to own your own houses probably are interested in doing things with them that make them look better. Maybe planter boxes, a bench for your patio, a fence, something like that. There's a tool that you should have in order to make that all possible, and that is a table saw. I beg your pardon. Not the reaction many people have to the word table saw. Table saws are interesting tools. You can do amazing things with them, but you can also subject yourself to life-altering or even life-ending injuries if you don't treat them with real respect. That's what I'm going to talk about tonight, is how you need to think about table saws in order to make them good things rather than bad things. The first thing is the saw itself. If you drive out to Walmart or Shopko, you can find these little things they call table saws. They cost about 150 bucks, give or take a little bit. They're little bitty things, about yay big, on this flimsy little metal stand with a stamped steel blade and adjustments that don't really work at all. Those things are not only poor quality in terms of what you can do with them, they're dangerous too. The main thing about a table saw that you want is stability. And in order to get that, you need what they call a contractor's saw. If you've ever seen the tools in a van that a general contractor or a hardwood flooring contractor or something like that has, you've seen one of these saws. They typically, it can be lifted out of the van. People sit on the tailgate of a pickup or a couple saw horses, something like that. They are generally in the $400 to $500 range. But for $400 to $500, what you get is a much more sizable table. You get a real blade with carbide tip. You get adjustments that can be done pretty finely. And most of all, you get stability. You get strength. The thing won't move. Now, you can put one of these things almost anywhere. I've seen people work them sitting on the ground even. But what you want to do when you're buying your table saw is to buy the folding metal stand that all of the saw makers make as well. When you put the saw on that stand, it will be solid. It won't move or rotate around or anything like that. That's really important because you want the table saw to sit at a certain height. When you put your hands out, you want to be able to put them on the table part of the saw, the top surface of the saw, so they're about like this. If it's much lower than that, what you end up doing is having to squat down. And as you're working the saw, it's pretty easy to lose your balance. And if you do that, there's a chance you'll put your hand in contact with the blade. That will ruin your day. On the other hand, if the saw is too high, it's very awkward. It's hard to work with and be extremely tiring when you're pushing wood through it. So you need to have that good height. The next thing you need to think about is how you use the saw itself. If you think for a moment, picture this as the wood. The blade is spinning counterclockwise, which would actually be like this for you, and the teeth are entering the wood from the top. Now what that means is if something goes wrong, the blade is capable of firing the piece of wood backwards right at you. I've seen lots of people stand directly in back of the blade of the saw and feed the wood into it. They will have a piece of wood come back at them with just incredible force. You can't believe how fast a saw can flip a piece of wood until you actually see it happen. The proper technique is to stand off to the side and feed the wood in so that there's an area in back where nobody is, and nothing that can get broken, like say a window or something like that. Because a harpoon comes off of that saw, You don't want it to hit you, you don't want it to hit anything valuable or delicate. The saw blade is spinning at well over 1,000 revolutions per minute, and so it can flip the wood. It'll be gone before you know it's gone, unless it hits you, and then you will know it's gone right away. And the doctors in the ER will be saying, how did that guy get a chunk of wood in his stomach like that? Anyway, something to think about. It's really not something to joke about. What you also need to think about is accessories for your saw. The good news is there are thousands, maybe, of different accessories for table saws. The bad news is that most people don't buy the one really important accessory, and that's a push stick. Push sticks do exactly what the name implies. They help you push the wood through the saw. As the wood goes closer and closer to the blade, your fingers get closer and closer to the blade. So you want something other than your fingers in there. The thing about table saws is they can get kind of hypnotic as you're doing, especially repetitive cuts. You have to make, say, 50 of some, little inch-wide piece of wood or something. It's easy to just kind of start shoving it through, and the next thing you know, you're just pushing it through with your thumb, and it works great, right up till the time it doesn't work great at all. So you need a push stick. The problem is wood looks stable, but it's actually got tension inside of it. The grain of the wood causes that tension. And when you start cutting it, that releases some of those forces. And what can happen is that the blade, the cut can pinch shut suddenly if the wood twists a little bit, and that's when the blade will flip it backwards toward you. Or you can screw up and get a little bit off and tilt the wood a little bit to the side, and then grab it and shoot it backwards. Sometimes the wood has moisture in it, and that also creates the problem of it moving as it goes through. Now, most table saws have a guard, a blade guard, that has kind of a vertical piece of metal, and it separates the cut. The bad news is almost everybody takes that blade guard off, because it's a pain in the neck to use the saw with the blade guard on. Figure, well, what could go wrong? What can go wrong is you could lose your hand, and so you really need to either leave that guard on or be very, very, very careful, one of the two. Another problem lots of people have with a table saw, especially if they have kids, is that their kids like to watch it. It's a fascinating piece of equipment. It's so fascinating that kids will go to the garage and turn it on. And so you definitely want to have a way to secure the power switch. A lot of the newer saws have a switch where you can put a little padlock on it to stop it from being turned on by anybody without permission. You don't want kids standing around while you're using the saw either, because it's so easy for pieces of wood to hit them, and that would be a very bad thing. The good news is with a table saw you can do a lot of stuff. If you get good at it, it's amazing what you can make with them. The bad news is you really have to avoid that familiarity breeds contempt problem.